In prime time and streaming live, it's your news playlist every night.
Top Story with Tom Llamas, weeknights at 7 on NBC News Now.
A police reform experiment in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The city sending social workers instead of police officers on some 911 calls. NBC News correspondent Jake Ward checks it out.
Elisha Lucero was a generous, bubbly soul, her sister says.
She was the kind of person who put off her life for my dad, taking care of my dad while my dad was sick, and taking care of my uncle while my uncle was sick. And so that was just like Elisha. She was a very giving, selfless person.
But after surgery to remove a brain tumor, her family watched her mental health deteriorate.
For that year, she was seeking help. We were never pointed in the right direction.
And on the night of July 22nd, 2019, she grew increasingly agitated. Her family, not knowing what else to do, called 911, and sheriff's deputies arrived.
Unfortunately, that was one of the biggest mistakes that we made, because Alicia's not here today. That call resulted with my little sister, who only stood 4'11" tall with her shoes on, being shot 21 times by the men who were called to help her.
The Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office settled a lawsuit with Alicia's family in 2020 and said in a statement it responded legally and appropriately. Research suggests that anywhere from a quarter to half of Americans shot to death by police are in a mental health crisis. And New Mexico has one of the highest rates of fatal police shootings in the nation.
Unfortunately, what happened to Elisha has happened to many people here in Albuquerque. But now a new program hopes to take police out of mental illness responses entirely.
A new city department, Albuquerque Community Safety, operating alongside the fire and police departments, sends two-person behavioral health teams out into the streets each weekday.
So I'm not a police officer. We were just concerned and want to make sure you're all right.
Their mandate is to address fundamental problems, lack of shelter, mental illness, addiction, rather than crime. Director Mariela Ruiz-Angel says the agency is a dramatic change.
Somebody who might be stealing water from a business, the police are there potentially to cite that individual for theft. We are there to try to address the underlying issue of what was going on that you felt like you needed to steal that water. Having options for our community, again, such as a behavioral health responder, gives our community that self-choice.
We watched the team try to help several people.
This region can be pretty harsh on people with the winds and the dry, cold air.
And there's another challenge for this team, trying to speak with people in crisis who are squatting in empty homes.
You know, we try to use a soft voice, reassure them that we're not law enforcement.
How often does a call go sideways?
It doesn't. We haven't had a sideways call.
Albuquerque is one of several major cities across the country, including Denver, Portland, and San Francisco, that have adopted an alternative to traditional police response. Because traditionally, police are not trained for this sort of thing.
So when we, cite or arrest someone, it's because we're trained to do that first. All the resources, all the, transportation to the hospital, transportation to local providers, that's second. And sometimes you don't ever get out of that criminal role because that's your first you're trained to do that. That is what your job is to enforce the law. But I definitely think that ACS will assist us in reducing the number of people with behavioral health issues who are arrested.
Now, Albuquerque 911 dispatchers will shift these sorts of calls to specialists. For Elisha, this change came too late. But it's important, her sister says.
I know that if we would have had a different approach that night, instead of deputies, banging, demanding her to come out, telling her to act like an adult, agitating the situation more than what it needed to be, she'd be here. This department is an answered prayer. It really is. That cross is actually a cross that Elisha brought home. I don't know where she found it, but she brought it home one day. And those are her shoes. Yeah.
She threw them up there.
Yeah, she took them off and threw them up there.
A reminder that anyone can fall prey to mental illness and that hopefully no one has to die that way again.
An emergency rescue crew was in the right place at the right time.